Well, with more on Alberta's 31st general election, we're now joined by Jen Gerson, freelance journalist and the co-founder of The Line, and Tyler Dawson, the Alberta correspondent for The National Post. Welcome to the both of you.
Thank you.
Hey, Jen, I'll get you to start us out here. You know, according to the polls, as you know, this is going to be a tight race in what is a historically conservative province. So is this a vindication for Rachel Notley or criticism of Danielle Smith?
Could that be both? Could I lock in both answers?
Absolutely.
So I do think that Alberta does get a reputation for being a conservative province. I think that conservatism is less rooted in ideology and more rooted in an accident of history. Conservatives have traditionally been associated with protecting this province and being in opposition to the liberal governing elites of Ottawa and Ontario. So, because the fealty to conservatism is really more tribal than it is ideological, I know a lot of conservatives are going to get angry at me for saying that, but I think it's generally pretty true. It may not be that you can rely on this province to vote conservative based on the same conservative values that a lot of partisans would necessarily associate with conservatism. Yeah, so the high ratings for Rachel Notley, I think, are very much a reflection of the fact that she has governing experience. She was premier for several years. She didn't really have a scandal-prone time in government. Certainly, there are a lot of conservative people who associate the economic fallout as a result of the 2014 oil crash to her and her party and her party's policies. But I think that when you compare that to Danielle Smith, who doesn't really appeal to a lot of more moderate conservatives, a lot of more red Tory conservatives that have traditionally made up the PC party in this province, that becomes a tougher choice than a lot of people would otherwise assume.
Mm-hmm. And Tyler, what's your read on that? Is this a vindication for Notley? Is this a repudiation of Danielle Smith, or at least a wariness that's being expressed right now in the polls?
Well, I think a lot of what's going on here is this contingent of voters who are sort of reluctant UCP voters who haven't totally made up their minds and, might have voted for Notley in 2015, but opted to cast their ballot for Jason Kenney's party in 2019. So I think that's sort of the big open question right now is who are those people and who are they going to vote for? And the question before sort of these reluctant conservative voters is whether or not Danielle Smith's UCP is the same party as Jason Kenney's UCP that they were able to vote for 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Now, you look at the numbers right now, and they seem to suggest that Edmonton and the area, perhaps not surprisingly, will lean more NDP. Also, perhaps not surprising to see that rural ridings are leaning more conservative. But Calgary really is, it seems, the linchpin for any victory here for either the Conservatives or the NDP. Tyler, talk to us about Calgary and how that's shaping up right now.
Yeah, polls show sort of Notley ahead and then they show Smith ahead. So it's a bit of a toss-up at the moment. Calgary has gone to both parties in the past. In 2015, the NDP took most of the seats. The UCP took most of them in 2019. So, I don't think we're seeing some sort of massive realignment here that explains Calgary being a little bit up in the air. I think it's sort of the same issues we just discussed. Is Smith's UCP appealing to Calgary voters in the way that Kenney's UCP was appealing to Calgary voters? And as Jen sort of alluded to, there's a couple other things that have happened in the last two elections that just aren't the case this time around. In 2015, when the NDP won, that was the end of 40 years of conservative rule in Alberta. And then in 2019, when Kenney won, that was after 4 years of sort of economic strife in the province. So it's in some ways a very, very different state of affairs going into this election.
Mm-hmm. And Jen, how do you see Calgary working out right now?
Yeah, no doubt that it's going to be a battleground. I think it's actually going to even come down to a few number of seats in Calgary. I'm in the far southeast quadrant of Calgary, deep suburbs. I'm pretty confident that the UCP will win here. But, you start getting into some of the inner suburbs, you start getting into the northeast, you start getting into some of these more interesting areas. And, the demographics are highly reflective of demographics of other urban areas and other parts of the country. And as a result, you do have less reflexive conservatism here, just as you would have in any other city in the country. Alberta is really weird in the sense that there's also a significant portion of people who in the in the last couple of years have voted Conservative federally, and they'll vote NDP provincially, and that's not off. That's not weird. There's a significant number of people who will do that for various interesting reasons. So yeah, it's going to come down to a couple of suburban ridings in Calgary that will prove to be the linchpin. I would say that the NDP has a less efficient vote. If we're going into the last days of this election with 50-50, I'd put my money on the UCP over Notley just because of that lack of voter efficiency. But I wouldn't say that in the next 4 to 5 weeks, if Notley can massively increase her profile, if she can demonstrate that she's someone who is grounded and takes the economy seriously, and if she can come across as more reliable and less uncertain, less unhinged than Danielle Smith and her base and her people who support her. I think that a lot of particularly older Calgarians who maybe voted PCs all their life will give her a second chance.
Okay, listen, I've got 2 minutes left here, but I want to ask the same question to both of you. And Tyler, I'll get you to start us off here. I'm wondering how Danielle Smith's harder stand against Ottawa will factor into this vote. Will it? Won't it? How do you see that issue playing out?
I suspect that where that is going to matter is in animating UCP enthusiasts to get out, get involved, help knock on doors, put up signs, that sort of thing. The hard on Ottawa thing is, I think, very much a dyed-in-the-wool UCP member voter sort of phenomenon. I don't think it's swinging that many votes, especially in the places where those votes need to be swung.
Jen?
Yeah, if I'm looking at the ads so far, they're focusing on issues like healthcare, they're focusing on issues like taxes, they're focusing on issues like character of both Notley and Smith. I'm really not seeing a lot of ads on Ottawa or standing up to Ottawa. I'm also not seeing a lot of ads associating Notley with Jagmeet Singh or Justin Trudeau, which was something that the Kenney government really relied on back in 2019. So my suspicion is that that's correct, that Ottawa's not really moving a lot of votes one way or the other.
Okay, well, the campaign has just begun. Us three will probably get together again before this is over. Jen Gerson, Tyler Dawson, thank you so much for this evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.